everyone, good morning. I am outside doing my quick morning walkabout and I figured I'd take you with me and do the May garden tour in that style. So it will all be selfie mode. I'll just be walking and talking as if I'm inspecting the garden and showing you what's in bloom. But I wanted to start up front today. I don't normally show you my front garden beds, but with this Baptisia in bloom, it's one of my favorites, and so I absolutely had to start up here. Clearly, it's a pollinator favorite too. This is pink lemonade Baptisia. It's really a perennial that I look forward to every year when it's in blooms. The blooms will go from yellow towards the top and then have an ombre effect into a purple color. So this Baptisia is very much large and in charge. I am 5'4" and it comes to me about almost chest height. And then it's probably about 4 feet in width. Baptisia is a perennial that'll only bloom once in about spring. If you have it towards the back of your garden, that's a perfect place. If you have it kind of up front like I do, I suggest underplanting with something that blooms in late summer, like a Shasta daisy, so that you have some more interesting blooms later in the season too. Also, I wanted to give this Japanese maple a moment. This is Golden Falls Ryusin. It is a weeping Japanese maple that I started from a 1-gallon plant a few years ago. I am training it serpentine, which yes, of course, can take a few years to do, but check back in a few years and I will have $1 million looking garden. Behind me is my front bench, and then one of my favorite shrubs or small trees, I'm not sure kind of what you call a pinky winky standard, but it is looking so good this year. Let me show you how lush the leaves look. If you want to learn more about the different types of hydrangeas and kind of when they bloom and where to plant them, I did a full video on all the different types of hydrangeas. It's the last one that I posted, so go check it out. This is a panicle hydrangea, so it's just starting to bud up. But later this season, it is such a showstopper. It does bloom earlier than my limelights, so that's kind of nice. Like, I get those panicle hydrangea blooms a little bit earlier than limelights because around that summertime, I am just like craving them. I'm waiting for them. The macrophylla hydrangeas are kind of dying down and they're tired, and I'm just waiting and waiting for those to open. I moved this yarrow here from last year because it flopped in my other garden bed and I didn't have room for the flop, but actually I kind of like the way it takes up that horizontal space, and it looks so perfect against those Oso Easy Italian Ice roses. Those are from Proven Winners color choice and they have a little bit of yellow in it, so that was completely unplanned but somehow came together beautifully. Don't you just love it when that happens in the garden? Okay, now let's go through the usual spots really quickly. I'll show you what's blooming now. It is towards the end of May. So here's what's looking good in my garden in Atlanta, zone 7B, 8A, in late May. So this bed was added to the garden last fall. It's coming in beautifully, but unfortunately, the hydrangeas that I planted last year, Elizabeth Ashley, did die all the way back to the ground, so I will not be seeing those hydrangea blooms this year. But that's why we plant different varieties of hydrangea. So oak leaf hydrangea made it through the winter and it is absolutely beautiful this time of year. This is ruby slippers, and in a couple of weeks it will start to turn pink. Towards the front of the border, I also added some perennials in. I'm trying to create a layer effect, and so planting the shorter perennials up front, like the lamb's ear, and then having the Mongolian asters. This is one of my all-time favorite perennials, you guys. It blooms almost all season and does not stop. It's such a good one to add, and I don't see it sold much in stores, but if you can find it online, it's definitely worth ordering. And I also added some coneflowers. These are Powwow White Echinacea. They've been a very reliable coneflower for me, and once I kind of like a variety and it does well in my garden, I kind of just put it everywhere, so you'll see it throughout. I also added in this magenta pearl phlox. This came from Natchez Glen. He sells really cool perennials, and this was part of a package that he sent to me. So I thought, what better place to put it right here? This bed has that new bed planting feelings. Like, I can't wait to see what you look like when you grow up. That excitement of like, I hope all my babies play nice together, but also look good together when they grow up. So we'll see. You're probably going to see Sushi as a staple in all of these garden tours. She just does whatever she wants. Now these beds back here are about a year to a year and a half-ish old. They are a mixture of sun and shade, which is really fun to design with because you get to plant all the things. You might be thinking, Michelle, what's the plan for the playground one day? And the answer to that is I have no idea. Maybe a spare garage, maybe a garden shed, maybe a greenhouse. Probably not that. I don't understand the point of a greenhouse in the South personally. But you can change my mind about it in the comments if you think I'm an idiot. But I figure might as well plant up this side area and make this part beautiful, even though I have the playground in the back. Basically any land that I can kind of garden in will eventually get a bed. Coneflowers are getting ready to bloom. This is actually double scoop mandarin. I don't often have orange colors in my garden, but it's always worth branching out and trying something new. And I actually really love having it. I think it complements the Roseanne geranium blooms just absolutely beautifully. So right now it's my orange exception plant. Also, another great thing to know is that when you're buying echinacea or coneflowers and you want those big fluffy double blooms, know that sometimes they will revert back to their singular blooms, which are still beautiful. It'll stay the same color, but it won't be fluffy, and that's exactly what happened to these blooms. So make sure you like the color of the blooms and you don't just love the fluffiness. The back half of this bed is very, very shaded, but I love how you're able to see the sunny parts with the blooms and then the shaded parts with all of the hostas, and it just kind of blends together in the funnest way. So I'll pop the names of the hostas really quickly on the screen. I don't have much to say about them individually other than they look amazing with contrasting colors all clumped together. The big glossy leaves that you see here, those are Virginia, and one day I will have a Virginia bloom and I will like this plant, but until then I am very impatiently waiting to see what it blooms and how it looks like. Somebody tell me how I can get this plant to bloom. I'm going to be very brief about the hydrangeas behind me. The white ones are Hydrangea arborescens. They are Invincible Limetta. They are stunning. They completely died back this winter, but you can see it doesn't matter. The pink ones in the background is Hydrangea macrophylla wee bit grumpy. They are dwarf and won't get any bigger than 2 feet tall, and I just think that's beyond adorable. And then this garden bed to the right of the playground was always meant to be a little pollinator fun garden for my girls and has quickly turned into my favorite bed of all time thanks to the phlox and oak leaf hydrangea combination. This phlox is opening act pink addocked phlox. It starts blooming much earlier than other tall phloxes and is absolutely gorgeous. I'll be cutting it back in a few weeks after it kind of peters out, and then I'll get a second flush later in the summer. This oak leaf hydrangea was labeled as ruby slippers and I got it from a local nursery that was closing down. Not sure if it actually is ruby slippers, but it is absolutely stunning. I do prune on it, and I do talk about how I prune on oak leaf hydrangeas and when I prune on oak leaf hydrangeas in my last hydrangea video, so go back there and watch it if you're interested in that. I have a thing for statement trees and arguably might have too many for my small property, but I just can't resist them. This is Ruby Falls Redbud. It is a weeping redbud and it leaves out with the most gorgeous velvety dark purple leaves. In the summer, it doesn't hold that color. It goes to more of a dark green, but still very pretty and just a lovely form in the garden. So of course you gotta find a spot for it. This is another amazing perennial that you must get if you see it. It's Magic Show White Wands Veronica. It is such a good plant. It doesn't stop blooming all season long. Highly recommend. At Last roses are in the background. I just planted those this past spring, so they are still growing in. This is another bed that I'm really looking forward to seeing how it evolves this season. Also, if you're looking for a good upright yarrow that doesn't flop, I highly recommend you check out the Firefly series from Proven Winners. I don't know what it is about this yarrow, but it is very upright. So this is Firefly Sunshine. There's also a Firefly Peach, which is like a peachy color that looks beautiful. Something about this yarrow just stays upright and works really well. This bed here is about 3 years old, and a lot of these things came from bare roots. Right now, the superstar in the garden, I think, is the Astilbe. It is a really easy perennial, super reliable shade plant, blooms beautifully, and adds a great texture in the garden with those leaves. This beautiful arbor is from Plow and Hearth, and it has the Eden rose growing on it. This is White Eden. I could just show you the beautiful white blooms, but to show you the full picture, this rose has both batryosis and leaf spot pretty badly. I'm not sure if as it matures it will grow out of it, but this rose has been kind of one that's been on the struggle bus, however beautiful it may be. But clematis are really never on the struggle bus. They are one of those great perennials that don't have lots of diseases, don't really require training up a trellis, and are beautiful climbers. Favorite part of this shade bed right here is the Heuchera grass. It is really beautiful. This is all gold. It does not like living in the southeast though, so I think if I was to plant another, I would instead plant Carex everillo in this part sunbed. That would give a similar look and contrast, but not be so unhappy. I'll spotlight the rest of the perennials in this bed when they're blooming in future garden tours, because this video is getting way too long already. And I think I've already had like 6 sushi features, but here's another one. Right behind her is one of my all-time favorite ferns that I think you should know about if you have a shady spot that needs a little something pizzazzy. Meet Godzilla Japanese painted fern, a beautiful fern that just lights up a shady corner. The Godzilla variety just grows so much better than the other variety that I planted here. I can't remember the name of it, but it just hasn't kept up. That back one you can see so much smaller, so much less impressive. I can't really remember why I only have 2 Godzillas and 1 non-Godzilla, but hopefully this illustrates the difference in how much more superior Godzilla is versus just a Japanese painted fern. Worth it. I'll plop the name of these hostas on the screen, but otherwise this bed hasn't changed much since last month, so let's move on to the next. So this is Tuff Stuff. It is a Hydrangea serrata from Proven Winner's Color Choice. I also grow the Ah-ha. If I would only have to pick one, I would say go for the Ah-ha. It is beautiful. The blooms are a little bit bigger and they're more double. It's really pretty. I'm adding in this new coneflower in this bed. Eventually, I have so many things on the eventually to plant list. How's your eventually to plant list going? Hopefully it's not too long. The last garden tour, I covered a lot of these plants. The GM right there that you see is Pretty Coats Peach GM. Really great one, still blooming, which is impressive. While Elizabeth Ashley Hydrangea couldn't hang, somehow Endless Summer is hanging in there and blooming beautifully. I think this must be all of the blooms that are blooming from the new wood. There's something special about Hydrangea macrophylla. The color is just otherworldly. And here's the view back up to the playground / future wood shop / future garden shed. Who knows? On this side of the garden, not too much looks different from the April garden tour, but the few things that I really want to highlight are how absolutely stunning caramel Heuchera are. I almost swore off all Heucheras in the southeast until I met Caramel. She really seems to thrive down here. She is reliable, she is hardy, she doesn't die in the middle of the summer. Everything you could want in a Heuchera. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I really love a bright, vibrant yellow in a garden, and Double Play Candy Corn Spirea really does it for me all season long. She is like a highlighter yellow. She has these really vibrant pink blooms, but even when she's not in bloom, she's absolutely gorgeous with that foliage. She's definitely one to pick up if you see her in a local garden center. She does not disappoint. I planted this wedding candles verbascum just to try it out, and the bees absolutely love it. It is an incredibly tall verbascum, so don't plant this if you're expecting something that's only 3 feet tall. Guys, this verbascum is almost my height. The side garden path is still under construction and will one day be finished. I cannot wait to show you what it looks like when it's finished and planted. I hope it's soon. The joys of DIY. And lastly, I wanted to take you through my veggie garden. It's something that I don't really talk about much in my long form content yet. I'm working on that. We grow out of 2 raised garden beds, which is near the house, which is important so you don't get lazy while checking on them. This year, I'm growing all the things that I love. So I've got some tomatoes, strawberries, we've got some flowers, some dahlias are going in this bed, and bachelor buttons, cucumbers, and peppers. Behind our garden beds is our little berry patch. So back there, we grow blueberries. This is my kid's favorite, so I've got to have lots of blueberries. Also in a raised beds, because you want to contain your brambles, we grow raspberries and blackberries. If you don't contain raspberries or blackberries, they will spread all over your garden. If that's what you want, then cool, but if that's not what you want, then go ahead and contain them. Then this is the garden path that goes from our patio to our veggie garden and our berry patch. It's the path that my kids hop down every morning to check on what is ripe, to see if they have snacks available. It's also our first DIY project, and we had to do it twice because the first time we got lazy and did it wrong. So I guess you can say we have a history of trying to do DIY paths that take way too long. This path is under the shade of a crepe myrtle, so lots of fun shade plants here. Hostas, Heucheras. I recently planted these Perfecto Mundo double pink reblooming azaleas from Proven Winners Color Choice. I will keep you updated. I'm anxiously waiting to see how they bloom. And also these Copper King Heucherellas are a recent ad. I'm really curious personally to see how they stand up and tolerate our weather and how they perform against Caramel Heuchera, which has just been stunning in my garden. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this little walkabout with me in the garden. This is my May/June garden tour. Some of the parts I filmed in late May, and then I also added in some clips from early June because clearly I am no good at doing these monthly garden walks when there is so much to talk about and I get distracted all over the place. So let's just call this my May/June garden. I might do a Quickie June tour, especially because if I remember from last year, I had a bit of a gap in perennials blooming during that time period. So that's a great time to get out into your garden and start brainstorming, going to the nursery, looking around your neighborhood, seeing what's blooming, and then trying to figure out where you can kind of plug some holes, because everyone's goal in the garden, I'm sure, is to have a little something blooming in every bed at all times, or at least in most bed at all times. And that is one way that I like to get inspiration for filling holes that I might see in my garden. Sushi would like to thank you for watching her garden tour video and ask that you kindly subscribe and follow along and support my channel.